All right, guys, welcome back to ZT Fully Loaded. This is your host, Zachary Torres, Zach, ZT, however you want to call it. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I do want to start off by just saying apologies. I know I didn't hit the channel this week with the college football week 4 recap and the winners and losers that we usually do. It was just a heavy week with work, and I sincerely apologize, guys. I can guarantee that will be the first as well as the last time that happens. But it is Friday, September 30th today, and we're going to jump straight into our week 5 picks, guys. But just because we didn't do that recap, and since I have it up right here, let's look over those week 4 picks. We went 2-2-1. Technically, this Notre Dame was a push because it ended up in a 3-point game, but 2-2-1. Notre Dame should have been a win, and they would have probably been on our losers page if we were going to talk about it. Marcus Freeman not wanting to take a penalty when they're already at the 1 yard line. What is half an inch going to do there? To be completely honest, I'd much rather play with my full team rather than being down somebody. And where they scored the touchdowns, where that player was missing. They played to not lose the game, and that's what happens when you play not to lose the game. You make mental mistakes, make mental error, you become conservative, and that's what cost Notre Dame the game. It was unfortunate to see because they played a hell of a game for mismanagement at the end, and I blame that one quite a bit on coaching, to be completely honest with you guys. We have Florida State at Clemson. Florida State pulls out a tough one. I think this one was one of the best games of the day, if not the best game, right there with Ohio State and Notre Dame. It was an awesome game in overtime. Florida State pulls it off. Nevada at Texas State, I thought it was going to be under. I thought they would just be more physical. I didn't think Nevada had a good offense. They still don't, and just Texas State didn't show up. I think it was a one-trick pony that one time that we saw him at the beginning of the year against Baylor, and then that's it. But yeah, that goes way over right away. Colorado, Oregon, I'm officially off. I was never on the Colorado bandwagon, but I thought they were at least going to be able to score. I didn't think they were going to be able to stop Oregon, but I thought they were going to be able to score. And if it got away early from them, I thought they were going to be able to do a backdoor cover of some sorts. I even had them at plus 30 at some point. I mean, just got completely embarrassed, blown out of the water, and by all means, they deserve it, in my opinion. Deserve it, well deserved, and I'm happy it happened. Seeing Oregon's post-game interview or post-game recap on Monday morning or Tuesday morning, it brought so much joy to me seeing Shiloh Sanders talking all that crap, talking about beating up another coach, beating up other players, and then seeing him down and defeated. By all means, I'm not a hater. I'm not at the end of the day, I was happy to see the success. I love Prime. At the end of the day, it was time to get them off of their high horse, and I'm glad it happened in just epic fashion. Just a total collapse, and I don't understand why they're still hyped to see them against USC. I think that happens. USC probably can't stop them as much as Oregon did, but I do think they get their shit knocked in, for a lack of better words. And then we had Rutgers at Michigan. Rutgers plus 24.5 does cover for us there, so that's the 2-2-1 for us. We'll cover these beginning of the year Power 5 conference winners. All of our futures that we had talked about, we'll cover them in our preview right here in week 5. So let's go ahead and jump into that, guys. Like I said, it is Friday, September 30th. We are less than 12 hours away from our first kickoff on Saturday of week number 5. We had some pretty good games on Friday night. Louisville and NC State ended up being a really good game. It was disappointing to see Utah just put up the performance that they did. Man, they really missed Cam Rising. At the end of the day, they just could not muster up anything on offense, and I just feel bad for that defense. It kind of reminded me of the New York Jets, to be completely honest. So yeah, some pretty good games, and I'm excited for our Week 5 slate. So first, what we're going to do is go over our top 5 picks like we usually do, updates on our future, and then we'll go over the top 25 games, or the top 25 teams and their games and what we're seeing and previewing for this week. All right, guys? So our first game, and the reason why I have it first, because it's my absolute favorite play. And if I turn around, guys, I have the Ryder Cup in the back. It's already midnight, so they've already started since they're in Europe. U.S. just getting absolutely pummeled in day 1. I don't think they come back, to be completely honest. And then Zach Johnson just being a terrible captain in himself. I don't know if he's already trying to make excuses. What is going on there? It's sad to see. The U.S. has a lot of great players, a lot of good young talent. I just think there was very questionable decisions coming into this one. Questionable preparation and preparation time. And it's showing. Europe just showed up, ran over them in day 1, and then these first 2 matches already up to a lead. So I think it's going to be Europe's to run away with. But that's golf talk, and that's actually going to be something that I talk about later on for something to expect on the challenge or on the channel. I apologize. But let's go ahead and start off. This is my absolute favorite game of the week, guys. LSU at Ole Miss. This is gonna be my favorite game of the week to bet. Not like I think it's gonna be ultra competitive, or like it's gonna be a barn burner, or it's gonna be back and forth. It's gonna be overtime. I really hope not. 'Cause I don't want to be sweating this bet. I just think this is my lock. Like this is gonna be one of my biggest locks of the year. LSU minus 2.5 at Ole Miss. I talked about it last week. I'll talk about it again. I think Ole Miss is significantly overrated. Like they should have lost against Tulane. It was their backup quarterback. They were down pretty much most of the game. Then they come back in the fourth quarter, and then Tulane's quarterback, fell apart. To be completely honest, and that's credit to Ole Miss. They handled what they needed to. They put pressure on at the end. At the end of the day, that game shouldn't have been close. That was a 7 point spread when the starting quarterback was still in, and then he gets scratched late, and it turns into like a 12 to 13 point spread, and they're barely able to pull it off. And then it ended up being like they covered, but at the end of the day, it was because of like two pointless turnovers, just trying to force the ball into place, trying to catch up at the end of the game with seconds to play. That Ole Miss returns it, and it turns into a bigger winning margin. I think that is covering up the fact that they're just not that good of a team. They're a mid to average SEC team. And I've talked about this with LSU. The reason I thought they were going to be a Power 5 conference winner is because I thought they were going to be competitive. They have the talent on the roster to be competitive. And at the end of the day, I said it last week, I'll say it again. This is Brian Kelly. This is LSU. I'm going to lose against the top teams at the beginning of the year. I'm going to lose against them at the end of the year. But during the middle of the year, when I'm playing all of these mid to average teams, I'm going to dominate. So that I'm number 8, I'm number 9, I'm number 10, I'm number 7. When it comes out to those rankings, and I'm always that bubble team that's always creeping around. That's just LSU, and that's LSU at its finest. And to have them at minus 2.5, less than a field goal, I think is a blessing. I'll probably be taking them also money line. But I love this. I love this line. I do think it should be closer to 7. I think it's probably minus 4.5, minus 5.5, to be completely honest, rather than 2.5. I get you give them the 3 points because it's at Ole Miss. So technically, yeah, if you're not giving Ole Miss the home field advantage, it's minus 5.5. If it was in Death Valley, it'd probably be closer to 8. So yeah, give me LSU. I think LSU pulls away. I think they show their dominant force. Why? Because they are top-ish of the SEC. Ole Miss is middle to last, or middle to bottom, in my opinion. So that's my favorite game of the week, guys. LSU at Ole Miss. Give me LSU money line. Give me LSU minus 2.5. My second pick, Florida Gators at Kentucky. I don't know why everybody's forgetting what we saw from Florida the very first game. And we just talked about Utah right now. They just put on a pitiful performance without Cam Rising still. They didn't have Cam Rising in week 1. And even then, at that point in time, it was definitely those quarterbacks' first games without any experience coming in, fresh and brand new. And they were still able to dominate Florida. Just out physical them. On the offensive end, they looked dominant. And that's why it was questionable to see them against Baylor. That's why it was questionable to see them tonight, because they look so great against Florida. That speaks volumes about Florida after seeing what Utah was able to muster up tonight with those two quarterbacks. And they just absolutely dominated Florida. And that's what I think Kentucky does here. First of all, Kentucky's at home. So you're giving them that whole field advantage. But also Kentucky's a physical team. And we talked about Kentucky at the beginning of the year. Like the very first college football preview, I told you guys that Kentucky would be a sneaky, good SEC team and that there was somebody else considering for their overs of favorite season total. And I like them here. I do think these are one of these spots. I do think Florida is being hyped up because of what they did with Tennessee. At the end of the day, Tennessee's not that great either. We've seen it. Milton just doesn't have the touch. Beautiful arm that goes 90 yards, 100 yards. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you can't lay it in between the numbers to your receivers. And that's exactly what Tennessee is. Very inconsistent, and Florida took advantage of it. At the end of the day, and Tennessee had a lot of turnover that they don't even have the stuff that they had on defense. It wasn't a great defense. At the end of the day, they still have players. They definitely don't this year. And Florida took advantage of it. Credit to them. At the end of the day, I do think Kentucky's the better team. I don't think Florida is good. I don't think they'll be able to muster up much offense. And I do think Kentucky wins this game outright. Therefore, Kentucky minus 1. My third game, it's time to get on this wagon, guys. Washington is an absolute wagon. Washington is at Arizona this week. It's nothing. I think it's less about Arizona. It's all to do with Washington. Washington is an absolute wagon. Michael Penix should be the leader of the Heisman race right now, in my opinion. Like, I know Caleb Williams is still putting on a show. At the end of the day, USC hasn't looked that impressive. They haven't played anybody. They still get scored on a bunch. And at the end of the day, there's been some had sacks taken. I want to say there's been some turnovers. I just don't see like a dominant and like he's a runaway favorite for the Heisman. I don't. If I'm looking at it correctly, Michael Penix leads in yards. Michael Penix leads in touchdowns. Michael Penix leads in points scored for his team, and they're looking absolutely dominant. I mean, blowing out everybody on their path. And I think that continues this week. Minus 18.5. I think that's a still. I do think they easily win by 3 or more touchdowns. So give me Washington by at least 21, but here I'm taking a minus 18.5 because that's what the current line is. I know they're at Arizona. At the end of the day, Arizona's not that great. If they're able to put up a couple touchdowns, they're going to need more than that because I could see Washington again putting up close to 50. They just have elite wide receivers on the outside, and Michael Penix is just showing off what Michael Penix was last year. And now he's going to put himself on the national topic or national conversation, and you're going to see his name start creeping up a little bit more for this Heisman, more and more. Now moving on to East Carolina at Rice. I have Rice here. This one is more, and again, this might be like the bias of when we saw them against UT. At the end of the day, Rice is a good mid-major team. Like, I'm going to say it, they're a good mid-major team. And we've seen East Carolina as a mid-major team just get absolutely run over, blown out. And I don't know, Rice with JT Daniels, who's been an experience in the Power 5 conferences, I do think they're one of the better mid-majors, and it shows on their record. I know, or in their how close their games are, not on their record, but how close their games are. They are competitive. They kept it competitive for a good time in the Texas game, like through that first half. At the end of the day, Texas just has the talent from top to bottom and the depth that Rice will never have. But I do think they're going to have enough to beat East Carolina while at home. So give me Rice here. I do think Rice has the advantage. I do think they have a better quarterback. I do think they probably have better coaching at this point in time, and I do think they have a sneakily good roster that will beat East Carolina because East Carolina is not good, and we've seen it over and over again over the first 4 weeks. And lastly, our fifth and last pick, we have South Alabama at James Madison. James Madison, and I hate the rule for NCAA, and I feel so bad for James Madison. They move up to D1, they get in a new conference, and then all of a sudden they're not playoff eligible, they're not bowl eligible, and that just sucks. And we saw it last year. They should have been the champions of that conference. This year's going to be the same thing. And I just think that's what fires them up even more. They've looked good in the early season, to be completely honest with you. They've had some slip ups there in Virginia as well that just didn't look that great. At the end of the day, James Madison is a really good team, another really good mid-major team. South Alabama is not. And I think James Madison's better at home. James Madison, for a small school, can get rocking. We've seen it in the past. And shout out to PFT commentator from Part of My Take. I'm going to ride with James Madison, boys. It sucks that they can't still be eligible, things of that nature. But James Madison minus 2.5, they're hungry to just blow out everybody they can, to put absolute dominant performances to show who's going to be running this conference for a very long time. It's only been a year and a half since they've been there, and they're running that conference. And I'm betting here that they're going to continue running it this Saturday. So give me James Madison hosting South Alabama. James Madison minus 2.5. All right, guys, let's go ahead and go over our futures. So again, at the beginning of the year, we identified what our potential conference winners would be, as well as our Heisman favorites, our beginning of the year favorite season totals, both over and under, and then beginning of the year playoff prediction. Okay, guys. So after last week, Clemson drops another one, and I'm completely out on Clemson. I took Florida State. I just don't believe in Cade Klubnik. I don't believe in Dabo anymore. I think his time has come, just as much as it's even more than it's come for Nick Saban. I just don't think he has what it takes anymore in this new day and age with NIL, and he's been doing it forever, I know. But at the end of the day, Clemson just doesn't have enough. And they dropped to 0-2, losing to Duke, losing to Florida State, the two best teams in that conference, and I think their chances are slim to none at this point in time. They're going to need a lot of help, and they're going to need to shape up quickly, and I just don't think they have it in them, to be completely honest. Then we move to the SEC, LSU. We talked about them shortly here as my favorite game of the week. They're 2-0 in conference. At the end of the day, they did drop against Florida State at the beginning of the year. That doesn't affect their conference standing. Do I think they could compete with an Alabama this year? Yes. Do I think they can compete against a Georgia? Yes. Do I think they win? No. It's just LSU. It's typical LSU fashion, and hopefully I'm wrong at the end of the day. I do want to see Brian Kelly finally get to where he says he should be, and this is the reason he made the jump to LSU. so he can have those bigger recruits that he just couldn't get at Texas or at Notre Dame, because of all of the. I mean, we know what Notre Dame standards are. The standard is the standard, and he couldn't get those types of players over there in Notre Dame. He gets them here at LSU, and I hope they take that step. To be completely honest, we haven't seen it yet, but we should see where it goes. And Europe still continuing to dominate. Big 12, we had Texas, of course, hook 'em horns. They opened up with a dominant performance at Baylor, at Waco. We got in, we got out quickly. That's the only way to get get in and out of Waco. Nobody wants to stay there that long, and that's exactly what happened. They just go in, absolutely dominate, hold Baylor down to 6 points. We're dominant on the run. They didn't have to do much from the pass, but Jatavion Sanders looked awesome. Byron Murphy on the defensive end looked awesome. There was a couple breakdowns by our defensive backs. There was a lot of special teams mistakes. At the end of the day, Texas looked great in their opener. I think they had the most convincing and most dominant win in the Big 12 conference play for week 1. So that's Texas 1-0 in the conference. We have Oregon. We just talked about it. Absolutely just curb stomped Colorado from the get-go. What their coach said, they are not playing for clicks, like Deion said, and I think he was well with his right. And like, let's not kid ourselves. That's exactly what's going on in Colorado. And it's a recruiting game, and that's what it's about. Try to attract people, try to attract the hype, and that's working. Get the celebrities there, and that's what's going to attract recruits. At the end of the day, you're doing exactly what the Oregon coach is saying. You're looking for clicks, you're looking for views, you're looking for celebrities, but you're not doing it on the field. And that's exactly what Oregon proved there, 1-0 in the conference. So that is looking good. I do think Oregon can beat USC because of the physicality that they possess that USC just cannot compete with, and we've seen it year after year. And then Big 12 as our Big 10 as our final. We had Michigan. Michigan still looks good. Harbaugh returns. They do dominate against Rutgers. They didn't cover, luckily for us. But at the end of the day, I still think they are the cream of the crop. I do think when we get to Ohio State, we saw Ohio State struggle against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame tried to do what Michigan did, and then they gave up on it in the fourth quarter. Michigan's not going to give up on it. We've seen it 2 years in a row. They're just going to outmuscle them. They're going to outwork them. And when we start getting to that third and fourth quarter, you're going to start seeing the difference in the trenches, and you're going to start seeing that running game get going for Michigan, and Michigan's going to win again. And that's why I still have them as my Big Ten conference winner. Remember, at the beginning of the year, we had our favorite Heisman. We said it was Caleb Williams. He's now at 350. At the beginning of the year, he was 450. And then Sam Hartman really had a shot there. Last week, he was at plus 850, I want to say, before the week. If they would have won that game, it's probably staying at 850 because he didn't do much, but maybe going down 700, 600. I mean, just an absolute terrible coaching, game management at the end. Cost Notre Dame that win. Cost Sam Hartman probably any chance he had at the Heisman, to be completely honest. And he falls back to where he was at the beginning of the year at plus 1,600, unfortunately. And really, who the one is not there, and I think who's going to end up winning it? It's going to be Michael Penix. Like, he deserves it. They're going to need a couple big wins. They need to be competitive for the Pac-12 championship. But with that offense, they have a pretty good defense too. I do think they're well within their right, and they can control their own destiny to get to that point. So I do think you're going to start hearing Michael Penix's name come up here, especially when we start doing our winners and losers and recap on a weekly basis again. And then beginning of the year, favorite season totals, because we had Texas at 9.5 wins. We are now at 4-0, looking to go 5-0 tomorrow against the Kansas Jayhawks. Stanford over 2.5. We're now 1-3. Again, that Sacramento loss is going to wound. It's just going to weigh heavy. That Sacramento State loss should not have happened. It's going to be 1-3. Now they need 2 upset wins throughout the season. I just don't see it happening, to be completely honest. So I'm really worried, and that one's in jeopardy. California under 5.5 wins. They're now 2-2. I do think they're going to win this week, to be completely honest, against Arizona State. That's just how bad Arizona State is at this point in time. But I do think that could possibly be their last win of the season, if I'm being honest. And then Mississippi State under 6.5 wins. Now they're at 2-2. Again, just getting curb stomped by LSU. Now they have Alabama this week. I don't see them beating Alabama. So yeah, give me them to go to 2-3. And then the beginning of the year playoff prediction. Remember, we had Georgia, Michigan, Texas, LSU. We've talked about LSU multiple times. We're not going to talk about it again. We talked about Clemson. They're 2-2. And we're not going to talk about them again. And then we had Oregon at 4-0 as the outside looking in. I still feel confident in those top 3 seeds, and those are currently your top 3 seeds in the nation: Georgia, Michigan, and Texas, according to the AP poll, and well-deserved. And I think that stays that way, guys. Texas, we're going to talk about it right now in the top 25. I'm not going to jump ahead of myself. We'll talk about it right now in the top 25, but this is your outlook right now for the beginning of the year. Playoff prediction: our 1 through 3 seeds are still looking good. 4 is very questionable. They can play themselves in. They can win at the end of the season against Alabama. They can win against Georgia in a championship, things of that nature, to get themselves back in. So there's not completely hope lost, but it is going to be a tougher challenge at this point in time. And then Oregon looks good. I do think they're going to end up winning the Pac-12. Clemson, you're done. All right. So that is our week 5 picks, guys. Again, LSU minus 2.5 at Ole Miss. Kentucky hosting Florida. Give me Kentucky minus 1. Washington at Arizona. Give me Washington minus 18.5. Just absolute wagon. East Carolina visiting Rice. Give me Rice money line down in Houston. And then South Alabama visiting James Madison. I think James Madison deserves a lot more than what they're getting for a stupid NCAA rule. Give me James Madison minus 2.5. All right, guys, with that being said, let's go ahead and pull up the top 25 teams and what their games are looking like. And let's break them down really quickly, guys. So we're just going to go in order of the schedule. So it's going to start from our 10 o'clock game all the way down to our night game. And I want to say the last one for the top 25 is either Fresno State or Washington. So we have USC at Colorado. I was surprised at the 10 a.m. kickoff, but that's exactly what it's going to be. I know some people are worried, like, oh, USC is going to be playing earlier than what they're used to. I mean, guys, it's 9 a.m. It's not like traveling to the East Coast and playing pretty much at like 6 a.m. your time or 7 a.m. your time. Like, let's tone it down a little bit. At the end of the day, I do think USC is just way too powerful. We saw Oregon can't stop, or Colorado can't stop a nosebleed against Oregon. I just think Caleb Williams and that USC offense will be too much. I do think Colorado will score a little bit more than they did, especially while now at home. I just don't think they're that good. And I know on the Horns 2020 podcast, and if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. Got to do the full episode with my boys. Absolutely enjoyed it. And Dom will actually be here this weekend. We're not going to the game, unfortunately, because you see this ticket price right here, $234. Hell no. But we'll be watching the games out in downtown Denver. Excited to have my boy Dom here and his fiance Bex here. It's gonna be a fun weekend. We'll be watching these games. We'll be watching the Canelo fight. And then I'll be talking about some things that we're going to be debuting over the weekend while he's here as well. But yeah, give me USC. But on the Horns 2020 podcast, and that's where I was going. I apologize. It's late and I'm just going delusional a little bit. But over under 73. I think on the podcast it was 71 or 73. I can't remember the exact number. We took it just because we thought it'd be a fun over, as like the full podcast bet. I don't think it hits, guys. Again, Colorado showed all of their flaws. Shador Sanders is a damn statue back there, which is, I mean, mind blowing. Like, he looked worse than what Matthew Stafford looked on Monday night, and Matthew Stafford is how much older than him? How many more hits has he taken? How many more injuries has he taken? He just looked like an absolute statue. If you want to be number 2, if you don't want to be number 2 to Caleb Williams, don't worry about it. You're not gonna be number 2. You're gonna be like number 13 at this point in time. Like, there showed a lot of flaws, and I don't want to hear, oh, it was offensive line, oh, it's good we can get the running game started. All of the excuses came out for Colorado last week, and that's exactly what we were expecting from the very beginning. I was expecting when they played TCU. Unfortunately, TCU is just as overrated and mediocre as they are. All of that came true, and I think USC exposes them again this week. Texas at Kansas. Of course, we got the Longhorns in that one. I do think this is going to be a game last week, or like what I said last week against Baylor. Quinn Ewers really didn't have to show out. We didn't need to see the Alabama Quinn. I don't think we're going to need to see him this week. I mean, Texas ran all over Kansas last year. I don't see many changes on their defensive end to change that up. I do think they're maybe going to be able to score a little bit, but I talked about this on the Horns 2020 podcast. I do think Texas's defense is for real. Why? Because of that defensive front. I mean, Byron Murphy is an absolute beast, and I'm just going to talk about him. With all due respect to everybody else, but he is a game record coming from down the middle. I mean, rushing your face is the hardest rush to deal with when you're able to collapse the pocket that way, and that's what he does. And then you have Anthony Hill as a spy. We saw Anthony Hill just be very successful against Jalen Milroe, who I think is a better quarterback than Daniels here at Kansas. You never know where it can go. Of course, Texas has struggled with teams in the past. We've lost to Kansas when they visited Austin the last time. I do think those are all reasons why Texas isn't asleep for this game. I know it can be one of those games that can be Texas falls asleep. Texas doesn't want to show too much because they face Oklahoma next week. At the end of the day, I do think there's motivation. It's a top 25 matchup first and foremost. It's somebody else in the Big 12 that's undefeated and, I mean, a threat to the Big 12 championship. And it's somebody that had come into your home 2 years ago and beat you guys, and that was embarrassing enough in Stark's first year. I do think they're going to be up and awake for this game. Yes, I am worried that the playbook will be limited. At the end of the day, they didn't really need much of their playbook last year with all of the running schemes, and I can see that again this week. But at the end of the day, what I really want to see and what I really think is going to happen is Quinn Ewers and Jatavion Sanders just dominating again. We saw Kansas give up 7 catches and 70-plus yards to the BYU tight end, who is nowhere near the talent of Jatavion Sanders. The quarterback is nowhere near the talent of Quinn Ewers. I do think that's a way to pick them apart from the play action to the seams with Jatavion Sanders for big runs afterwards and a couple touchdowns. So give me Texas against Kansas. I do think Texas also covers minus 16. And we look forward to the Red River showdown. It's no longer showdown. We have Notre Dame coming off of their just abysmal loss against Ohio State, going to Duke. I do like Notre Dame in this one. I do think the under probably gets close to hitting. I think Notre Dame. We saw Notre Dame's defense last week. It's for real. They grind the clock out by running as long as they don't get conservative like they did last week and just make bonehead mistakes. Shout out Marcus Freeman again. But I don't think Duke's loss, similar to what we saw in Colorado, are going to come out. Clemson doesn't have the defense that Notre Dame has. Nobody else at Duke has played and has the defense that Notre Dame has. And then on top of that, Notre Dame does have Sam Hartman. Notre Dame does have the running game. That's Clemson did present some issues for Duke to try to stop the running game. They would just fumble every time. Notre Dame's not going to do that. So at the end of the day, give me Notre Dame at Duke. Penn State at Northwestern. I'm not going to waste much time. Give me Penn State. I do think they cover. This was one of my favorite picks as well. Just didn't make my top 5. But I do think Penn State can win by 30. We just saw them cover against Iowa, who's a better defense, and they're not a good offense, but they're a better offense than Northwestern. Northwestern's just an absolute dumpster fire. The only reason they get a win is because they play UTEP, who's our loser of the week every week at this point in time. So yeah, give me Penn State covering 26.5. Florida at Kentucky, we broke this down already. Give me Kentucky while at Lexington, Kentucky. I do think they're better. They're more physical. I do think Leary will be able to lead them to victory. He's a great quarterback, and I think he's a better quarterback than Mertz. We saw Florida in week 1, and that image is never going to get out of my head. I don't know how they're number 22 just for beating Tennessee, who's just as inconsistent. We've seen it over and over again, and they beat them while at home, hosting them. I just don't see it, guys. But yeah, give me Kentucky beating Florida. Georgia at Auburn. I do think Georgia covers this one. Auburn just looked absolutely terrible against Texas A&M. Yes, Texas A&M, the convict school. Yeah, the one that gets arrested every time. Texas A&M has no offense. They look like they had an offense against Auburn. And then they really don't have the greatest of defenses. We saw it against Miami. And Auburn could not move the ball to save their lives. And I think that just, intensifies with Georgia. Georgia's an overall better team, better experience, better coaching. Coaching, hands down, we all know that. Over Texas A&M, and I think that shows even more against Auburn shows that against Georgia even more, and they cover this minus 14.5. Michigan at Nebraska. Give me Michigan. I'm not going to waste time again here. Minus 18. It's tough to tell. I've been telling you guys, Michigan is one of those schools that's hard to tell on these big spreads because of how much they run the ball. Like, it's hard to say they're going to win a game by 30 because of how much they run the ball and how many times they're willing to just turn around and put it in the belly of their running back. And that just kills the clock now with these rules. So it's hard to say minus 18. I do think they get it done, though. So I'm going to say, if I have to pick, I'm going to say Michigan does cover 18 just because Nebraska's offense is so bad. And that's going to cost them short fields, and that's what's going to get Michigan on the board. Missouri at Vanderbilt. Give me Missouri. Haven't kept up with these two teams, so I'm going to keep the analysis short. I just think Missouri is the better team. Vanderbilt is a baseball school, so give me Missouri. LSU at Ole Miss. I already told you guys this is my favorite game of the week. I'm taking LSU money line minus 2.5, minus 4.5, all the way up until 7. I just love LSU against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I think, is very underrated. I do think JT Daniels takes advantage of it on the offensive end, and I do think LSU's defense is just too much to handle. They just beat Arkansas last week. I definitely think Arkansas is better than Ole Miss. The record doesn't show that. The ranking doesn't show that. But that's because of the inflated wins that we were talking about earlier. Give me LSU here. Oregon at Stanford. I'm taking Oregon. I don't think this is one of those Stanford upsets that we are going to get. I don't know. And I also think Oregon covers. Again, I don't think they're going to be as hyped up as they were for Colorado. I do still think they go and take care of business, and Stanford just isn't good. If you lose Sacramento State, that's the end of your season. Oklahoma at Iowa State. Oklahoma does win this game outright. However, I don't know if they cover. Their offense looked terrible. Don't tell me that. Who did they even play last week? Who did you guys play last week? Oh, Cincinnati. Don't tell me Cincinnati is the world beater of defenses all of a sudden. That you guys were only able to muster up so many points, and pretty much keep it close all game, and now you're gonna tell me you're gonna go beat up another Big 12 rival who's known you for years now. It's not like Cincinnati; they haven't played in forever. You're gonna beat them all of a sudden by 3 touchdowns. I don't know. It's very possible. We've seen Oklahoma put up big numbers, but I do think they also are looking ahead to Texas. I do think they also limit their playbook, and I also just don't think they're that good, to be completely honest. And Iowa State is not good, but I do think they're good enough to cover minus 19.5 against Oklahoma. South Carolina at Tennessee. I don't want to talk about either one of these teams. Both, terrible. Both overrated. Rattler has been overrated since he was at OU. And then Tennessee with Milton again, amazing arm talent, no touch whatsoever, and that's what you need as a quarterback. Love it or hate it. I just don't think Tennessee is good after the performance that they put against Florida. After Florida put that performance against Utah, I don't think either one of them should be in the top 25. Unfortunately, they are, but I don't see that lasting much longer. And I do think South Carolina covers here just because Tennessee is so damn bad. Alabama at Mississippi State. We talked about this a little bit earlier. As Mississippi State, we have their under. I don't think they beat Alabama. However, I do think they can keep it close. I do think this can be a 10-point game, a 9-point game, 14-point game, and that still covers for Mississippi State. So give me Mississippi State to cover while at home. They're just a frisky team, but they're not a good team. And Alabama is a better team, but they've been getting off to slow starts, and I think that's what contributes to not being able to cover minus 14.5. Washington at Arizona. We talked about this in one of our favorite picks. Washington's just a wagon. I'm on the wagon. Look at these numbers for Penix. 1,636 yards passing, 16 touchdowns. One of those interceptions last week was just absolutely terrible and mind-blowing that he threw it. At the end of the day, I think he's the top quarterback in the nation right now, and he's playing like it, and he should be the Heisman favorite. And I'm going to side with the Heisman favorite to go ahead and cover while at Arizona, minus 18.5. I just think that offense is too much to handle. And Arizona's not going to be anywhere close to the playmakers that Washington has to be able to stop them. And then Fresno State to round out our top 25 against Nevada. We've talked about Nevada over and over again. They are absolutely terrible. But they've been putting up fights. So that's why this one is scary. Minus 24.5. I might just take the under 51. Why? Because I think Fresno State has the defense to be able to shut down Nevada. But I said the same thing last week against Texas Tech. Then against Texas State. Again, Texas State isn't the number 25 seed. Fresno State is. I do think they deserve it. I do think Fresno State will be up for this game. It's a conference game. They're in the top 25. They're at home. So give me Fresno State to win this game. I do think to cover is a little bit more difficult to say. And I'll go ahead and take Nevada just to backdoor cover on that one. And again, we had Oregon State and Utah already kick off tonight. Oregon they didn't even look good. DJs looked pretty bad these last 2 weeks. Even in that pro style offense, it looks like the DJ from Clemson. And Clemson's just as bad without him, so no love lost there. But Utah just looks terrible without Cam Rising. They need him back ASAP, and I'm sure that pressure is going to start ramping up now after losing one game in the conference because they can be conference favorites if they're healthy. Why? Because of the physicality they have, because of the good coaching they have, and because of the veterans that they have, like Cam Rising, to be completely honest. So I do think they miss him desperately, and I do think they get him back soon, especially after this loss tonight. All right, guys, that is it for our recap. It is getting late here. I do have to be up early again, like my boy said. What I said earlier, my boy Dom is coming in tomorrow. Super excited. He'll be here Saturday and Sunday. So with that being said, guys, before I close out, I do want to announce something. So I'm going to be changing it up a little bit on the channel, adding some things. Again, I apologize last week that there was no recap. There will always be a recap. It was just busy, but I'm going to make my time and reserve my time and be better about it. There will be a recap for week 5 this week, and I'll probably even release that on Sunday. Why? I want to record it with my boy Dom while he's here, having some brewskis, maybe after Canelo fight or maybe after some Sunday football, and record that. Talk about hopefully the Texas win. Just talk about the top 25 matchups. Maybe we see an upset and break that down. So we'll be doing the recap. That's no news other than last week. But the real news, in my opinion, is the fact that I want to start doing sports news in general or just mainstream topics, but it's always going to revolve around sports. ZT Fully Loaded is a sports channel. Occasionally we'll bring up mainstream events. At the end of the day, we're not going to get into a debate about things. We're just going to bring it up what's in the news, right? I do want this to be a friendly channel for everybody. The Ryder Cup is going on. That's a huge thing in its own rights. We have NBA news starting to drop as their preseason is about to get ready to launch. We have MLB playoffs starting up. NFL is in full swing. We have fantasy football going on. The Champions League for soccer is going on. It's a beautiful time at this time of year. Hockey starting up in their preseason. MLS is still going strong. So it's tough for me not to talk about every sport because I love every sport. I bet, like we have a betting channel and we're talking about MLB, we're talking about college football, we're talking about NFL, we'll be talking about NBA, college basketball will be coming soon. At the end of the day, I want to be able to talk about all of that. And I want you guys to be able to talk to me about it. So that's why we're going to start that. What I think I'm going to do it is on a weekly basis to start off is just get the top 10 news stories. Let's go ahead and break them down. Like for example, this week, what I might want to break down is obviously the college football slate, the Damian Lillard news, the Ryder Cup and what's going on there. There is quite a bit to Chandler Jones and what's going on there in the NFL. I don't know why that's not getting more publicity, and it's unfortunate to see, to be completely honest. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to say anything other than that. It just sounds scary what he's going through, and prayers and best wishes to him. I know he's done some other things that are not so great and looked upon, but I pray for everybody's safety. I pray for everybody's well-being, and I hope he's okay, and I hope he gets the help that he needs. So ultimately. So yeah, there's a lot of stories, guys. As the NFL season he starts going through in full swing, we get closer and closer to trade deadline. There'll be trades coming in the MLB playoffs. I want to talk about that as well. So again, I think I'm gonna launch my first one on Sunday while Dom is here. Talk about the main news stories, let you guys comment. And then if we're getting some comments back, if we're getting some interactions, I'm happy to do it twice a week, like one midweek and then one on Sundays to recap even Sunday football. But if not, for now, I'll keep it from Sunday to Sunday. So once per week. So we'll recap all of the week as well as those games on Saturday and Sunday. Perfect opportunity while it's fresh in our mind. And then we'll look forward to the following week. All right, guys. So please be on the lookout for that. Please, again, just engage with me, guys. This is for me. This is for you guys. It's just a friendly place to have conversation. I'm excited for it. I hope you guys enjoy it. So be on the lookout. I hope you guys have an amazing Saturday. And I'm going to put up our picks one last time for this weekend. I hope you guys have an amazing Saturday. Be safe. It is going to be October now. September flew by. October is the best month for sports. It is Halloween time. Spooky season, guys. So I hope you guys have a good one, but be safe. And then I'll catch you guys on Sunday for a recap as well as our new what is in the news segment. All right, guys. So have a good one. Thank you guys very much. Let's get some victories, and I hope you guys enjoy college football week 5. Have a good one.